evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I call the Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. First thing is that we are being taped by ActonTV, and it is also live streaming. And the other thing, Maya Minkin is joining us on the phone, just due to the fact that she is in a different geographic location. So, Maya, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone.
That's good. All right. Which means that please speak up and into your mics. And if anyone does come up for public participation, I ask that you really speak loudly. Even though it's right here, sometimes it's difficult for her to hear. And Maya, you'll speak up if you can't hear something or you didn't catch something, and we'll repeat it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, all.
No. We're happy you're here. Happy you're able to participate. Okay. Okay. Yes, we're going to start because Mary wanted to say something.
I'd like to make a plug for Open Door Theater, who are out there right now. They're selling tickets. They're performing Cinderella this coming weekend and the following weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's a great theater group.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to begin the meeting with public participation. I do ask that anyone wishing to speak about either of the candidates keep their remarks to 2 minutes. Also, I ask that everyone to remember that we have two extremely talented candidates to consider tonight. I ask that you please phrase your remarks in a way that focuses on the positives or questions that you might have. This really isn't a time to stand up and say negative things that could hurt the candidate's reputation or hinder their future prospects, career prospects. So, is there anyone that would like to stand up and speak? And I'm sorry, we had to move the mic from there to here because of trying to, the sound, so. So for Maya, Heather Hare is going to speak.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening. I'm Heather Hare. I'm here just to speak more about the process. I want to address some conversations that we've had within the district for the last 6 to 8 months. I've been part of them. They've been centered around, this search and having a national vibrant search for the most qualified candidate for our district, keeping in mind that our students, our faculty, and our community members are of the most important. In watching this search play out, certainly a lot of it is confidential, and I respect that. However, I think that it really would be remiss not to say that part of a good search is being able to identify who we have not only internally but externally throughout our approach. And as you said, I certainly look at the candidates that you put forward, and with all respect, understand that they are in a position, within their careers that they could lend credibility to that position. However, I think what's important to note is that, we have someone in central office, without mentioning names, that is extremely qualified also for this position that we don't see on the list. I think it's important to note that if we're really thinking about what's the best for our district going forward, that we take a little bit of time to think about the decision that you're making tonight. Education and experience and all those topics that we talked about, when you weigh them, you can't note that it's not equal. And I really hope that you give this conversation tonight a lot of thought. We make decisions that clearly, from the past year we've had, it impacts us all greatly. And so I really hope that you take some time to consider who you're making decisions on, who you're making decisions that aren't part of this conversation, slowing the process down. If it's not the results that you wanted from your national search, then stop, take a deep breath, and reassess. And so that's an opportunity that you have tonight, and I hope that you utilize all of your expertise around this table and that you make the best decision for all of our kids going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes.
Good evening.
Yeah, if you just introduce
Sure, I'm Joe Biggins from Lincoln Drive in Acton. I've been a resident of Acton for about 20 years. This is the first time I've spoken to the school committee. Quite frankly, I'm pretty disgusted by this whole process. Heather is kind enough not to mention names. I will. Marie Altieri should be a finalist. She's the most qualified candidate. In due respect to the gentleman you have here, I think the school committee, I think the selection committee, I think they chickened out because of people that posted on toxic Facebook pages, toxic comments about people in this room, and especially Marie Altieri. So I think I will echo what Heather said, and I'll ask you to reconsider making that final voice today. Perhaps you could move forward to add Marie to that. Of course, we wouldn't want to break any open meeting laws and cause any more frivolous complaints about that, I'm sure. But I would like you to reconsider that and add Marie to the mix. If you don't do that, I would just say I would like to thank Marie for her many years of service, that my kids benefit from that, all of our children have benefited, and I think future children can benefit if we put her in this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other? Yeah.
Hi everyone, Angie So, and I just want to say thank you for the search committee and finding the qualified candidates, and one of the candidates apparently that has some personal issues that he withdrew, which is unfortunately. And the other thing I want to say, I have the opportunity to be able to join the site search, and I kind of want to say the process that the part that I am able to join is pretty smooth, and it's well organized, and from the site visit that I joined, then I can see the quality of the two candidates, and which are very qualified. They are very loved by the school district they represented. So I would just want to take the opportunity to thank you, and want to take a consideration for the two candidates as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yep.
Amanda Bailey, 50 Washington Drive, Acton, also chair of the Acton Boxborough Special Education Parent Advisory Council. I had the privilege of serving on the screening committee. It was a very positive experience with people who cared deeply about this district, the kids in it, the staff in it, the administrators in it, and everyone was very thrilled to be able to be part of that process. I encourage people in the audience, I encourage the committee to bear in mind the profile, the candidate profile that was developed with NESDEC's help, with community stakeholder feedback as we move through this process. Because we held that dear when we were on the search committee, and we kept referring to it throughout. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Flannery from Revolutionary Road. Lived here for 25 years, and my 3 kids went through the school system here, and I want to echo what other people have said about this process, and I just think it's really sad what's happened, and nothing against the search committee and the job they did and the candidates, but I think that the absence of Marie Altieri is incredible, and I think that people, the school committee, let a very small group of sometimes very nasty, bullying people sway them. And I want to thank Marie, too, for all she's done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Lynch, and I live on Overlook Drive here in Acton. I am both a parent and an employee of the school district, and I would respectfully ask that you do not hire either of these candidates tonight. I don't believe that either is a good fit for the Acton Boxborough School District and the huge initiatives that face this district in the coming years. A new school building, change in start times, single-tier busing, mental health initiatives, and the hiring of a new high school principal, to name just a few. All of these initiatives will require strong leadership and experience, and it appears to me that neither candidate has the knowledge or depth of expertise in these areas with a district of our size and complexity. I would strongly urge you to think very hard this evening about naming one of these as our next superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak? All right, thank you all for your comments. So I'm just going to start us here. I did want to also say I really do appreciate all of the feedback and the fact that each of you stood up and were willing to share your thoughts. I think at this point, though, we're just going to turn the meeting to just the school committee and have our discussions and not open it up for any more public feedback. So just to kind of make that clear. Okay, great. Hiring a superintendent is one of the most important decisions that the school committee can make. We started this process last November when we hired NESDEC as our consultants. After posting the job and developing a candidate profile, the committee, the committee established a screening committee to review resumes, interview candidates, and bring forward finalists for the full school committee to consider. I'd like to thank each one of those members that participated in the screening committee. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort. I do think that it was a process that we could be proud of. It was a very diverse group of very intelligent people who cared deeply about took their job seriously and cares very deeply about our district and our students. 3 finalists were put forward: Peter Sanchioni, Peter Light, and Anthony Parker. Mr. Sanchioni withdrew from the process, and we proceeded with Mr. Light and Mr. Parker. On Wednesday, February 28th, Mr. Parker visited the district and toured our junior high, high school, and 2 of our elementary schools. We had forums with teachers, administrators, principals, support staff, parents, and community members, and then we ended with, after a very exhausting day, with a public interview with Mr. Parker. I'm going to ask now that if Tessa would share the feedback forms from the forums, just for Mr. Parker.
Sure. All right, so we received approximately 80 feedback forms, ranging from students to senior leadership team. Anthony Parker was appreciated by many in our community. His thoughtfulness, listening skills, and his passion for making decisions based on student need were the attributes mentioned most frequently. Many felt he would be an asset to teachers because of his experience in the classroom. He recognizes the importance of relational trust in decision-making. His approach to diversity was also mentioned as a strength because he sees the value in diversifying staff and increasing cultural competencies. He was very poised and deeply passionate about some of his initiatives like the June Academy. It was expressed that he seems to have strong building level skills, but many wondered if this would be enough to take the next step as a district level leader. It was felt that he has a lot of secondary experience and is comfortable speaking about innovations and decision making at that level. Many wondered about his limited experience with the elementary and preschool level. Knowledge of characteristics of strong leadership was mentioned as a strength. People noted that he knows his own strengths and weaknesses and would be able to reach out to more experienced colleagues when he needs additional information. Amongst staff and leadership, there were a lot of questions about how his specific experience would translate into strong leadership in the central office and across a district as large and complex as ours. Overall, Anthony was viewed as a solid candidate with some questions about his ability to scale up.
Thank you. On March 2nd, a group from AB went and visited Weston and had a tour and met with the Weston High School and met with various stakeholders who've worked for many years with Anthony. So I'm going to ask the person, that's Mary. Mary's going to share about the site visit.
And before I jump in there, I'd actually like to recognize the site visit committee and all the work they put in, because it's a significant amount of work. And that is Diane, Paul, Eileen, and me from school committee. Cabinet representation was Aaron Betez and Amy Bizowitz. Principal representative was David Crane. Teacher representative was Karen Sonner. And community representatives were Adam Klein and Angie Zhao. I'd also like to thank all of the stakeholders in both the Weston and Franklin communities. There were quite a few stakeholders, and they gave us a good amount of their time. So our site visit summary for Anthony Parker. We organized this according to the professional leadership qualities that were part of our successful candidate profile. I apologize, it's a little long, but we had 4 hours in each community, and so we're sharing the wealth of that information. In terms of interpersonal communication skills, all of the people we met with reported very positive and collaborative working relationships with Mr. Parker. He was described as approachable, very accessible, and welcoming. Stakeholders across the board indicated that he is a good listener and that he is present during conversations. In addition, they widely praised his communication skills, particularly his writing skills. Multiple colleagues said his communication with parents was so good they want to use his material themselves. Understanding and experience addressing the needs of an increasingly diverse student body. Students are at the forefront of Mr. Parker's priorities. He is always finding the best ways to support students' best interests and helping them to reach their highest potential. He has developed several programs that address specific needs of students. The June Academy, which uses the last 2 weeks of school for special mini courses, were conceived by teachers and students to better engage students at the end of the school year. Mr. Parker supported their ideas and worked hard to bring it to implementation. Mr. Parker was instrumental in developing the bridge and transition programs to help students who need academic and social accommodations and support returning from medical leaves, respectively. Mr. Parker has been programmatically responsive to the needs of students on either end of the learning spectrum at the high school in Weston. However, given the varying needs of students at different levels, stakeholders acknowledge that he does not have experience with equity and inclusion at the elementary level. Mr. Parker's learning curve leading the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District in this area would be steep. Decision-making and continuous improvement. Stakeholders noted that Mr. Parker is action-oriented and drives his decisions based on facts, data, and inputs from as many perspectives as possible. They noted that he is a good decision maker. He is adept at including people who have more content knowledge and who may have different perspectives to thoroughly look at an issue. Stakeholders noted that Mr. Parker does not focus on the reasons a project or change cannot be done, but rather identifies the challenges and addresses them and moves forward. They commented that he does not put off decisions until everything is perfect, but rather looks to implement good ideas and then works on improving them. He is also very strong on follow-through. While there have been many great initiatives at his school, many of the stakeholders were quick to share that these ideas were generated by the community and that, rightfully so, Mr. Parker gives credit to those who came up with them. Our concern is that we did not hear examples of initiatives developed by him personally. Experience, knowledge, and engagement. All of Mr. Parker's experience has been at the high school level and for the last 12 years in a small district. Stakeholders indicated that he has stepped up to take on additional district-level roles during Weston's frequent leadership changes. Colleagues noted that he has joined district working groups that address issues at the elementary level, and he has visited the elementary schools, but his work in this area is not deep. The people we talked to, however, were firm and unequivocal in their belief that Mr. Parker has the intellectual capacity and interest to further develop and learn about these specific challenges. Additionally, he has not worked with the district-level budget or ever in a region. He has limited experience working with town officials. Team building and values related to quality and accountability. Mr. Parker builds and maintains trusting relationships with the students, teachers, and people around him. When dealing with conflict or differences of opinion, stakeholders noted that Mr. Parker gives voice to other stakeholders and can change his perspective based on the information he hears. He considers all sides of an issue and is good at cutting through the noise and getting to the issues. But he is also able to make decisions that go against others' wishes. He doesn't shy away from conflict. When he makes decisions that others don't agree with, however, he is clear, direct, and open. He explains the rationale for his decision, and generally people feel respected and heard. Experience with budget development and capital projects. Though Mr. Parker did oversee the construction of the science wing at Weston High School, he has not partnered with the MSBA on a major building project. Additionally, he lacks experience in developing a capital improvement plan. These points are concerning given that Acton-Boxborough has made a capital improvement plan a district priority, and we have a relatively short period of time before we need to sell the building project to our two towns. From what we have learned, this candidate would need to rely heavily and perhaps completely initially on district leadership to move these initiatives forward. Leadership style. Mr. Parker is a much respected and loved school leader. He was described as an inspirational leader who makes people feel important in playing a role. He encourages people to take on leadership positions. Input from all stakeholders indicate that he has the capacity and will to tackle problems in a way that includes all constituencies and to take on problem solving and conflict in an inclusive and process-oriented way. Additional comments. Overall, the site visit team feels that Mr. Parker would connect and work well with students, teachers, and parents. There was more concern about his experience working with administrators and central office staff, town boards and management, and the school committee. The group felt that Mr. Parker moderately meets the needs of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District at this time.
Thank you, Mary. The last piece is, I know that there were some reference checking done. Is there, Dennis,
Yep.
you share what you...
Yep, that was me. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of speaking to multiple, actually 3 references from Mr. Parker. And each of them I asked the same question, so I was able to get similar feedback. It didn't sway too much. So I think all of them have been acquainted from them with Mr. Parker through not only the time at Weston, but also at the time at Newton North, when Mr. Parker took over Newton North, and who was at Newton North went to Newton South. One of his references actually met him when he was at Newton North, and then when he was assistant superintendent, when he was the assistant superintendent, and then now at the doctoral program at BC. So each of them had at least 10 years. One of his references had 17 years worth of time that they had experience with him. Each of them talked a little about why he was contemplating a job change. They think the general theme was that he had run his course at Weston. He was looking for additional challenge. His children now are at an age when he feels like he could step up from a family perspective and professionally and get to that next level. There's a couple of his references that urged him years ago to start that process, but I think he felt like he's been in the position now where he could comfortably do that, which makes sense for his family. The type of leader he is, I think we saw part of that, and a lot of the feedback that came in through my conversations, we saw part of it here, where he's very thoughtful. He never jumped at an answer. He didn't just respond for the sake of responding. He takes things in and thinks about how he wants to address things in a thoughtful way, as opposed to rambling on and just starting to answer a question and just trying to figure it out as it went along. Spends a lot of time building relationships internally within the building, and brings a lot of integrity to that process. One of the things they pointed out is, and you talked about the type of leader, and he mentioned the June Academy here. It's been mentioned a couple of times here. It was brought up the fact that he actually engaged with the union leadership early in the process and got them on board, helped get them to the point where they were good. So as they started getting deeper into the planning process, and other stakeholders, by the way, not just the union leadership. So as they got farther into the process, he knew nothing could torpedo it if they were going down the correct path. So we literally got everybody on board early and then kind of drove them down that path. Strong conviction, thoughtful, not afraid to make a difficult decision. Actually, all three of his referents said that he will make a tough decision, put some thought behind it before he does, but when he does, he'll stick with it. He'll reassess if somebody has brought other additional information to them, but otherwise than that, he puts a lot of thought into what his decision-making process. I will say that from an experience perspective, I talked to two of his references were one of them was a sitting superintendent. One of them had been a superintendent at multiple places and now works for the agency that coaches superintendents, which the life of me now I can't remember. And they both said that they thought, we talked about the experience factor, and they both addressed that by saying, they both believed, and these were independent conversations, that being a building principal in a high school gives you a lot of the experience that you will need as you take that next step, even more than being an assistant superintendent, they thought. Because of just how you have to deal with the decisions you have to make and the day-to-day operations of that particular building. So I thought that was actually kind of, and that came from, like I said, two of the references. Thought that was interesting. And I think that's really the extent of it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for all of your work with on Anthony. And I do want to just quickly interject that all of these materials will be posted after the meeting. Maybe not tomorrow due to the storm, but certainly as soon as possible. And it was our hope that we could post it before the meeting, but again, with the storm and so many of us lost power and didn't have access, we do the best we can with what we have. Okay. So on Thursday, March the 1st, Peter Light came to AB. He went through the same rigorous process of visiting schools, meeting with teachers, administrators, principals, support staff, and parents. And he concluded his visit with a public interview before the full school committee. Tessa, would you like to share the feedback for Peter Light?
Sure. All right, so we received approximately 90 feedback forms for Mr. Light. He was noted to have many strengths by parents, students, staff, and administrators. His thoughtfulness, energy, passion for students, and overall communication skills were mentioned again and again. Staff were particularly impressed with his focus on inclusion and equity and his experience with social-emotional learning. Many people mentioned the correlation he drew between mental wellness and academic achievement. Teachers felt he would be supportive and that he valued collaboration and relationships. Many felt he would understand and initiate a healing process across the district. It was noted that he seemed to understand our district very well and had obviously done his homework. In particular, an appreciation of the individuality of our elementary schools was mentioned repeatedly. Although there were a few questions regarding his lack of experience outside of Franklin, it was noted by many that he would be their choice for superintendent. His experience with the MSBA, the MTSS process, and an understanding of the budget stood out as strengths. He impressed many with his passion for student-centered decision-making as well as his core value of trust. We recognize that there was feedback from the senior leadership team and the central office that there was a desire to have serious consideration or recruitment of qualified internal candidates. However, a vast majority of his feedback, however, indicated that people feel he is an extremely qualified candidate and would be a great fit for our district.
Thank you. Okay, and then March 5th, we had another site visit to Franklin, and I'm going to ask, who's doing that one? Paul, to share about the site visit to Franklin.
He's got the most words.
Oh, good.
Big type. I had to make it big type. The last thing I read out loud was Cat in a Hat, and this is very different reading. So the site visit summary for Peter Light, the interpersonal. So these follow the same categories that Mary had set up for Anthony. Interpersonal and communication skills, Mr. Light is a person who treasures and cultivates relationships, as we heard from many colleagues regarding his abilities. Many people mentioned his sense of humor and ability to connect with people. He seemed as comfortable back in his high school as he is in the administration building. Both town and school personnel really value working with him and the personal connection he brings to that work. Many stakeholders felt that Mr. Light is an excellent communicator and gave specific examples of his communication skills. He listens to others and is able to adopt ideas different from his own if they are more beneficial to the students. Mr. Light was described as thoughtful, approachable, available, proactive, and supportive of staff and students. He is someone who you can count on to follow through on an issue or a problem. A principal explained that you could call Mr. Light when you needed someone to help you solve a problem or brainstorm through an issue, or simply someone to listen to you. According to stakeholders, Mr. Light works closely and effectively with town officials. Understanding and experience addressing the needs of an increasingly diverse student body. Mr. Light was described as a strong advocate for students. His work always has the best interest and safety of the students in mind. A teacher sought out one of our team members to share that when a student was not getting services that were really needed, Mr. Light got involved and personally made sure the student was getting what he needed to succeed in the school day. Stakeholders said he fosters an inclusive environment and knows the students and families. Stakeholders emphasized Mr. Light's creative and impactful work on social and emotional learning in the district. They indicated that when Mr. Light took over leadership of the Wellness Committee, he brought a high-level framework to the group and helped the committee recognize that in order to serve the children, they also have to serve the families. Mr. Light collaborates with YOU Inc., or U Inc., a behavioral health and education organization which is piloting a mental health clinic within the school setting. And he has liaised with Lesley University to implement their trauma-sensitive schools framework in Franklin, and with the YMCA to implement the concepts of social thinking, including zones of regulation. The YMCA is using this as part of their staff training, so there's continuity between the district and community programming. Working with the schools, the YMCA also provides the district with food backpacks for families who need assistance. Stakeholders gave examples of Mr. Light's providing opportunities for all students. While a principal at the high school, Mr. Light started the Franklin Arts Academy, a school within a school, focused on students who are bored with and or need alternative ways to learn. The program is academically challenging with honors, AP, and college prep classes. He also increased the number of AP courses at the high school and has created a new tradition for Franklin students taking part in the Special Olympics, where after the games, a police escort meets the bus at the edge of town, leads them back to the high school where all the students and faculty line the driveway and welcome the athletes home. This tradition is valued by all students and faculty. Mr. Light also started a substance abuse task force to address this issue in the district. This task force includes students, parents, and teachers and administrators. The stakeholders at the site visit did not discuss any specific examples of Mr. Light addressing academic inclusion for students with special needs. This raises a concern that in similar high-performing district there might be less focus on the academic needs of all types of learners. Decision-making and continuous improvement. Stakeholders noted that Mr. Light is a decision-maker. He's not afraid of making hard decisions. He can be firm but leaves room for dignity, fairness, and value to be in the forefront. He's able to maintain good relationships even when having difficult conversations. He was described as proactive. Stakeholders said he is able to identify problems before they escalate. Experience, knowledge, and engagement. Mr. Light has experience working with town groups, parent groups, and every level of school system in Franklin, which has 11 schools. He works closely with the Director of Student Services, collaboratively with the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and he's on Franklin's Policy Subcommittee. He participates in all district budget meetings with principals and leads the Peer Observation Committee for Struggling Teacher. He has spent the past 2 years in the central office role, getting involved in as many aspects of running the district as possible. His superintendent called Mr. Light a thought partner and a trusted and valued advisor. She said, in many ways, he co-leads the district. He seems to be able to connect with the teaching staff and administrators equally. He has a great deal of social capital in his district. Many times we heard that once Mr. Light gets involved in something, he does the research to be fully informed about the topic and fully commits himself to the endeavor. This was described regarding his work on the design and construction of a new high school, as well as the SEL committee he chairs. He also involves the experts around him to strengthen an effort. He can look at the big picture when moving things forward. One concern is Mr. Light's lack of experience in a superintendent role. Although the type of decision-making that occurs within a high school and as an assistant superintendent can be similar to those types of issues that face the superintendent, experience in the role provides a greater foundation upon which to rely when there are very difficult district-wide decisions that need to be made. Mr. Light has also limited experience on elementary level. He has co-taught a few elementary classes and works with elementary teachers on committees. Elementary teachers noted, however, that no other central office staff has come to the elementary schools in past years, with one exception. On the other hand, Mr. Light has been at these schools 4 or 5 times in this school year alone. Team building and values related to quality and accountability. Mr. Light was described as the team player and someone who encourages and supports others. Colleagues noted that in the meeting and on committees, he strikes a good balance between his voice and the voice of the committee members. He listens to others and hears their perspectives, even if he disagrees. Colleagues say he always considers what is best for the students and will change his viewpoint if others bring better information. He seeks out experts for their input and listens to them to make the best decisions. He's not impulsive, but takes the time to learn about an issue and find the best solution. He circles back on issues when appropriate. One teacher gave an example of when Mr. Light turned down a new program idea due to lack of funding, but revisited the issue the following year when funds were available. He supports his colleagues to take risks. One example was the new forensic lab at the high school. They started that program with 1 pilot class, and it has grown into 12 sections. One teacher said, he's the guy in the central office who is always willing to help. Mr. Light can have difficult conversations when needed and handles conflict directly. One teacher noted that she shadowed him for a year and learned the strength of no. He's firm but fair. He talks openly with people about concerns and is receptive to hearing feedback about himself. Experience with budget development and capital projects. Since Mr. Light has only been the assistant superintendent position for 2 years, and because the final budget in Franklin is the town manager's budget, he has only limited budget experience beyond the school level, and none at a regional level. The stakeholders interviewed, however, believe that he has the capacity to learn and apply his knowledge quickly. Mr. Light was intimately involved with the Franklin High School building project, and its success was very noticeable during our tour of the facility. In this process, he worked closely with the MSBA to resolve many differences. Stakeholders talked about the significant amount of time Mr. Light dedicated to the project, working to educate the community and overseeing details of the project. The high school includes elements that were not reimbursable by the MSBA. For example, there's an indoor walking track, but Mr. Light was able to get the community support for these features. Mr. Light has the experience to lead the building project and has the communication skills and presence to sell the community on the project. Leadership style. Mr. Light promotes conversation from all stakeholders involved in outcomes. He seeks out experts and resources to utilize and shares them with others to make decisions. He was described as an analytical thinker. When listening to the voices of other stakeholders, he was described as a silent leader. Several stakeholders also noted that he's a mentor and someone they can go to with any concerns. They also describe him as consistent. When leading project, he knows when to slow down when necessary, when to push forward when appropriate. Mr. Light appears confident in his leadership with teachers and staff. Teachers discussed how, as a principal, he was an early adopter of a new teacher evaluation process. As the assistant superintendent, he recognized that there were some problems with the process, so he asked for anonymous teacher feedback and then openly shared all the feedback with the teachers so that they could work together to address the issues. As this has led to a consistent teacher evaluation process across the district that allows for some autonomy. Additional comments. There was some concern that Mr. Light has worked his whole career in one district and that Franklin district is less culturally diverse than ours. This would require learning to work within our community. Overall, the site visit team feels that Mr. Light would work well with teachers, administrators, and central office staff, town boards and management, and the school committee. To a slightly lesser degree, we thought he would connect and work well with students and parents. The group felt that Mr. Light significantly to moderately meets the needs of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District at this time.
Okay, thank you. Bridget, are you doing references?
Yes.
Okay. So I spoke with 3 references for Mr. Light. The references knew or had worked with him for a period from over 10 years to a little yet less than a year. Each worked very closely with Mr. Light and described a very productive and positive working relationship with him. Notably, each reference said that they would be very sorry to see him move on from a personal standpoint, but stressed that he was ready for a superintendency and that they knew he would get one. One reference described him as ready and hungry for the opportunity to lead a district. Based on the feedback I got from the references, it's clear that Mr. Light cares deeply about children. He has excellent communication skills. He's a visionary leader. He knows a great deal about education and the issues facing education today. It was also reported that he has great resources throughout the educational world and has spent many years building relationships outside of his district that he can reach out to for help and information. He's a very relationship-driven person. He was described as a powerful leader who has fantastic follow-through on projects. He's very open to feedback and is a very self-reflective individual. When he's given feedback, it is not unusual that Mr. Light would have already identified the same issue and was in the process of reflecting about it with the goal of self-improvement. He's open to input from others, and when appropriate, he will adjust his course and adapt based on feedback that he receives. He was also described as a researcher who will think outside the box to problem solve. When faced with a challenge, he fully researches possible solutions. He solicits feedback from others and suggestions to craft a solution, and then he comes up with a project plan for implementation in order to see it fully through to completion. One example of this was described from his high school principal experience when Mr. Light was working on a behavioral, mental health, special education, programmatic, and staffing change. He worked with the rest of the administration, student services, and the outside attorney to develop the program and put it in place. He was described as a key leader on the high school building project, while at the same time he was serving as the high school principal. He was described as being available 24/7 and willing to do what needed to be done to get things done. He worked very collaboratively on this project, including with the MSBA and other stakeholder groups to ensure success of the building project. Another example cited of a project was Mr. Light's work on civil rights compliance in the district. There had been concerns expressed in the district that more needed to be done in this area. Mr. Light headed up the efforts to improve district training on civil rights. He built the program not around a check-the-box mandated training, but instead set the stage that the civil rights training went beyond a compliance issue. His vision was that it was instead a moral imperative for the district, especially given the district's stated values of dignity and diversity and respect for all individuals and cultures. The civil rights training was thus raised from a check-the-box training
to what was described as inspirational. When handling controversy, he was described as level-headed, thorough, respectful, and fair. He takes a stand and can back it up with evidence. One reference said she had never seen him angry. When involved in controversy over a student issue, he will often end up having the family thank him, even if there had been some disagreement during the process. He was described as tackling problems with a sense of urgency, not panic, and without drama. He was described as being very level-headed. When I asked if there was ever a time that he had disappointed the person I was speaking with, the emphatic answer in all cases was no. Each reported that in almost every instance, Mr. Light had exceeded expectations and consistently went above and beyond what was expected. When I asked about the skills needed to lead a district the size and scope of AB, all references indicated Mr. Light's readiness, his proven leadership as a high school principal, and his 2 years as an assistant superintendent in a district of similar size, although not with as quite a large a budget as ours. He was described as a learner who knows when to reach out to other experts when necessary. When I asked if they would rehire Mr. Light, the answer was a resounding yes. In fact, he was a finalist for the superintendent position in Franklin, but at that time he had only just joined the central office. I think he had been there for a year, perhaps a little bit less, and some felt that more central office experience was necessary at that time. Deanne also did some informal reach out to parent in the community, and that parent did express some concern around lack of communication at the high school during Mr. Light's tenure. And that's all the feedback.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to do a quick check-in. Maya, are you still there? Maya? Yeah. Are you there?
Sorry, I just had the phone on mute so
That's
that
good.
you didn't hear the background noises. Yeah.
No, that's good. Okay, so are you feel like you've heard everything so far?
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. Okay, so we'll keep going. I think now that we've heard all of the feedback, I'm going to ask committee members to share where you are and what your thoughts are. So I'd like to hear from everyone, but I'm not going to go around and point to each person. So volunteers would be greatly appreciated. All right, Dennis, go.
Okay, thank you. Before I get into both candidates, I do want to say a big thank you to Diane and yourself and to Tessa for leading the search committee. You guys put in a lot of time and effort, and the other members of the community that joined it. I know there are some people who don't like the outcome of what came through the process, but we were pretty upfront about what the process was. We stuck to it, and all we can ask for is one that's above board, and we did exactly what we said we were going to do. So thank you. Couple of thoughts. So I was lucky enough to have both candidates. I was to join them for dinner privately with just a couple of the school committee members, and then of course in the open session. I paid attention to them as they spoke to the community, and then I also had the chance to ask a number of questions of them myself during the open session. And I went through this the last time we did this, and I was able to have dinner with the candidates, and then in a similar fashion. And I find each of them provides a different view into, each setting provides a different view into the candidate. So you have the very public one, and then you have the private one. And I think that both gentlemen, performed well in all cases. And they were definitely different. We'll start with Anthony Parker. So, I find it fascinating that when we were in the open session, one of the first questions he answered, he brought up school choice, which could have been, could be considered like the third rail of Acton schools, right? But yet he didn't shy away from it. And he brought it up, and it was in part of his answer, and he could have easily stayed away and never even touched it, but yet he still brought that in, so I thought that showed a lot of his confidence coming into it. You could say he was quiet, you could say he was reserved, but you could also say he was very thoughtful. And one of the things that came through in the reference calls was how thoughtful he was in his decision-making process. So I'm sure some people look at it and say, ooh, this guy's way too laid back. But, you know, in some respects, not jumping out there and just answering things and throwing stuff out because you think people want to hear it, that's kind of a nice trait. The whole conversation around Jude Academy and how we got that moving along and how he built consensus, I thought was excellent. And you know, one of the things that his references, I had mentioned that before, is and they talked about that, is consensus building and thoughtfulness behind how we came to decisions, and then the ability to stand behind the decision, and not just that, but just communicate it also. So that was an important component. So I thought Anthony did a good job. In regards to Peter, I like the whole that biolab story and how he engaged the community to build that biotech lab. I thought that was great. He's clearly more comfortable in front of a crowd, right? And you could tell by the body language, you could tell how he addressed not only us but also the community. So I thought that was good. And you know, when I step back and I think, even though I did Anthony Parker's reference checks, I step back and think about what two of those, you know, again, one sitting superintendent and one person who had been a superintendent in multiple places, talked about Anthony Parker's experience at the high school level and how it lends itself more towards a superintendent. But that could go for both, right? Because both of them had been building principals at a high school for a while. Okay. So for Peter Light, I think he got the community as much as he can for one day. I think he got the community. I like the fact he did his homework, drove around, checked out places. He seemed interested. I did ask him about being on in one place his whole career. And you know, you could look at it as a detriment, but you could also look at it, he's not a job hopper either, right? So there's a lot to say for that, and he's built his career over the time. So I think I was happy with both candidates. I had the, you know, a great meeting with both of them behind the scenes and then in public. So I was happy with what the process has put out, and I will be supporting Peter Light.
Thank you very much. Mary.
So for me, really, I'm at a point where I'm before even considering these two candidates. I think an important characteristic that we were looking for is significant central office and preferably regional experience, and we're not getting that with either candidate, and frankly, I'm very concerned. I think we have many initiatives that I think that both of these gentlemen could grow into this leadership role. I don't think we have time to wait for them to grow into the role. And so I think as a committee we need to consider, are we willing to give up that quality? I mean, that's one of our 6 elements is experience with budget development and capital projects. Peter has the capital projects, and I think that's fairly strong. But we say a strong working knowledge of regional school finance and budget development and management, and neither one of them has that. And we talk about in-house capital planning. Peter has a little bit of it, and Anthony doesn't have any of it. It really concerns me that it's not enough for what our district needs. Bridget.
So Mary stole my thunder. I think they were both great candidates and bring some experience to the table, and their references were great. I think they were both very well supported in their district. I thought there was some really good feedback being gleaned from the site visits, which I was really glad to see because I'm not a fan of site visits, so I was really happy to see the kind of feedback that you got on the site visits. And I think from the reference standpoint, the references were strong for both candidates. I think, you know, I have to respect the process that we went through to get to this point. I think the process is what we were asked to do by the community. We slowed it down to the extent we needed to. We had a very substantial plan in place. There was a diverse group that served on the screening committee. We had a comprehensive profile that was drawn up not only by the school committee but by the community. And I think the screening committee, I have to assume, based on the people I know that were on the committee, did a great job screening the candidates. I don't know who applied. All I know is who we ended up with. And I think you did a good job in doing that. And I know how difficult it is, having served on 2 screening committees in the past. So I really respect the process that we went through. I was a little disappointed in the outcome, but I certainly respect the process, and I respect the candidates that were brought forth. And I think they both have some strong qualities, but I'm very concerned about the budget experience. I think based on the 2 candidates that we have in front of us, I think Peter brings a little bit more to the table, Peter Light, based on the leadership qualities that we looked for in the candidate search. I wish there was someone, I wish he had some more substantial budget development experience in that district. And in a regional district, it would be great. So I do have some concerns about that. But that being said, I think the experience that he has is probably a little bit closer to what we're looking for, but I share Mary's concerns.
Paul.
So I also want to echo Mary and Bridget's concerns. After hearing Heather and Joe acknowledging the elephant in the room, I was surprised that we didn't have an internal candidate, especially after the past 2 rounds. We had a very strong internal candidate, and if the committee would be willing to reconsider that, I'd be willing to do that. If not, then I'm, no matter what candidate we think about, no one candidate is going to walk in here with a cape and an S on their sweater. So whoever we choose, I'm pledging that as long as I'm on the school committee, I'm going to work towards their success. So I also don't know what happened. So if this is the pool that we drew from, I have concerns with both of them. One candidate only has building-based experience, and that's nothing against them as people. I was very impressed personally with each of them. It's just the level of experience and the timing that we're on. We need someone to be able to hit the ground running. So, if we're not going to revisit this, then I would be leaning towards Peter as well.
Tessa.
So, I'll say that I just don't like the tenor of this meeting. I feel like this is like a big downer, and having served on the search committee, we were tasked with having a process that was above board, that was transparent, that followed a process that we started by coming up with a successful candidate profile. And while I agree that neither candidate has a lot of experience in central office, there are 5 other qualities that were prioritized as ways to pick a superintendent. And I do think we have 2 strong candidates. Obviously, a lot of what happened in the search committee is behind closed doors and can't be shared. But having sat now on the interim search committee and this permanent search committee, I've looked at a lot of resumes. I've interviewed a lot of candidates, and a lot of those were sitting superintendents or people that had more central office experience. And what I was really looking for in a candidate, and hopefully in a superintendent, was someone that could inspire, and that I sat there thinking like, wow, we could really learn something from that person. And during their initial interviews, and I felt much the same way after spending time with them eating dinner and listening to their public interviews, that these candidates fit that profile. That said, my preference would also be Peter Light. You know, I think that no, he doesn't have as much of the budget experience that maybe we were hoping for, but he has a lot of the other stuff. And listening to him, you know, when you're sitting in a search committee and there's only, well, there was 14 of us, so it was much like a school committee meeting, so there was a lot of people, but sitting in that interview, you know, I wanted him to keep talking, and it's always a risk. Then you bring that person here and you think, well, am I going to feel the same way, you know? And I did. I was wowed again. And yes, I'm new on the school committee, but I've lived in this district my entire life. And I just really think that Peter offered something that I wasn't really aware that we needed, but I think that he really brought a vision, or can bring a vision, that we need in a lot of ways. I know we have a lot of initiatives going, but we also have a really strong professional staff here that can carry a lot of that, and I don't think that he comes with that experience. I don't think that means that he's not going to be able to lead, but I think he'll certainly have a lot of support. So my preference would be for Peter Light.
Deanne.
Can I chime in?
Oh, yeah, Maya, go for it.
I'm sorry, I can't see who's raising their hand.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Maya.
I just wanted to add that I felt equally inspired by Peter Light, and I feel as though I have to trust in the committee's work. And I think that because we have such a strong central office administrative team, maybe perhaps some of the lack of experience around building a budget will be easily bolstered, and that we have all heard in the news for the last year about the shortage of superintendents in Massachusetts, and we're possibly not in an era where we can have someone that meets every single one of our needs. But I felt very moved and inspired by Mr. Light, and I would support his putting him into the role.
Okay, thank you. Deanne.
I guess you know, this is the second search that I've been able to be on. I guess I find it frustrating that no matter what, there's always discontent. And I mean, that's just in general, that's the way it's going to be. So whoever's not happy with the result is going to be the vocal people in the room.
Can you speak up?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll put my...
More on your mic, yeah.
Yeah, I got to speak into the mic, Maya, sorry. No, so I said I'm frustrated that we always end up in the situation that people feel like we're cowering to the public. And I think over many years that we've been on the school committee, I don't think we've ever cowered to the public. I think it's a strong group of people. I think throughout the 6 years that I've been on, I can say it's, you know, things have been thought out thoroughly. We totally have those situations where we disagree, but disagreeing helps, and discussions are made. I think I have to trust the process. I have, you know, originally when I saw the candidate profiles, yeah, I was frustrated, you know, like what? But I was on the screening committee for the interim, and you know, there aren't a lot out there. Bill, that's not saying that we... no, because I was totally impressed with you, just so you know. But there weren't, no, because it sounds like, well, we just took whoever we could. But I think that process worked out very well, and I think our year has been awesome under Bill's leadership. And again, we had a lot of dissenters when we went into that process. So we have to trust the process each time. I think it was a well-represented screening committee, from the group that I saw that was on it, and they took what they could, and then they gave us the results. In regards to the people that we saw that were presented to us, I got to sit at dinner, and I got to sit in the forum, and then I was lucky enough to ask a question during our meeting. And I do have to say, Peter Light definitely shined brighter than Anthony Parker. I was very impressed that Peter took the initiative to really understand our town, the school choice issues, the MSBA project. He brought up a lot of stuff that he had to have researched for a while on the internet. Now, that's not a qualification for a superintendent, but he was interested. I didn't feel the same with Anthony. I felt I thought he was very well thought out, very composed, really thinks about the answers he wants to give, and totally a logical, process-oriented thinker, and would be able to handle a lot of situations. But the fact that he didn't take any initiative to learn about our school district, and the things that were brought up in the forums were truly the things that had been discussed during the day. There were no other insights. It was just the stuff that had been, and he was honest about it. He said, oh, these are the things I heard during the day. That didn't impress me, because if you really want that job, you should be researching our community. Everyone had plenty of time to do that. When I look at the qualities that we need for a superintendent, there is not going to be any person that's Superman. I know you said with the S. There's not one person, internally or externally, that meets every single criteria on that list. So we need to think of what is our biggest priority on that list, and like what are our must-haves, what are our wants, and what are things that we can live without. I do think Anthony inspired me. Some of the stuff, some of the creative ideas that he had, he was definitely an out-of-the-box thinker. And I definitely like that idea for the district. And I know I had another note that I can't think of, but so those are my opinions right now.
Thank you. All right, Diane, no pressure.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts running around my head.
Speak up a little bit.
Yes. I want to start off by saying that the candidate profile that drove this process was like a credo to us. It outlines in exquisite detail the leadership qualities and features we are looking for in a leader. And MSBA experience, regional experience, and capital improvement planning experience are critical, especially right now. We have prioritized them for sure. I am not ready to exclude these two candidates based on 3 data points. The profile also points to dynamic interpersonal communication skills, deep understanding of the diverse needs of the diverse profile of our community. It points to accountability, team building, and a lot of other characteristics. It was carefully built by us, by teachers, teacher input, staff input, and community input. It belongs to us. We own that document, and it was the driving force in every phase of this process. I believe that we have 2 outstanding leaders to consider here tonight. Anthony Parker is a candidate with an incredibly strong record of trust building and relationship building. He is known for harnessing grassroots creative energy, ideas, and vision of those around him, among teachers, among students. This is a man who understands how to empower people. That's one of the things you really want in a leader. He knows how to be a culture builder. He has been a galvanizing force. That's what you want, a galvanizing force in his district, as he has stepped in to fill a vacuum in his own district leadership. And I feel he would do the same in AB. He is beloved in this district. I think over time he would be beloved in AB. He is adept and very strategic at crafting a message of continual improvement in really creative ways that has positively impacted academic learning and engagement and increased students' self-awareness as not just as students, but as relational social beings in Weston. He's in very powerful ways, and I think he would do that here too. I do wonder about the scalability of his skill set, if it is truly replicable in a district that's more than double his size. I don't doubt for a minute he could do it, that he's able to do it. It would take him time. So that's Anthony Parker to me. Peter Light is like 1,000% in. He's like creative, he totally does his homework, he wants to hit the ground running. He has a million ideas that could be applied here. Yet he says, notably, that it's the district leadership team that sets the pace. And I really was very impressed by that. He has worn tons of hats and has experience with the things that we are looking for. Maybe not the depth of experience, maybe not the breadth of experience, but he's not coming in completely unaware of how to approach a capital improvement plan or a budget. He is a phenomenal communicator. He puts people at ease. He would bring us back together, I feel, as a community. The way he presents complex info, it like transfers to all environments and all stakeholders. He is persuasive in a powerful way, and this is probably one of the things that impressed me the most about him. It's what great leaders do. They frame problems and initiatives in a way that makes complexity accessible, but also inspires us to envision with him the excellence that is possible if we all work together. That's what I got from his talk here to the community. He can get in the weeds, he can roll up his sleeves and get the work done, but he's never far from the bird's eye view to remind us about why we're doing what we're doing, about the principles and the values from which our initiatives and our policies and our budget flow. He like toggles between those two things really well. I believe he embraces partnerships and engagement between community and district in a way that I've never seen before. The way that there's a track, an elevated track in their gym at the high school, that's not reimbursable by the MSBA, and he went out and he got support in his community for that. I think that's kind of the future of towns and town government and school districts, where there are just more, you don't have people kind of functioning in a vacuum. There's more interaction between town and school, and I was really impressed by the work he's done there. He does not have regional budget experience, but I was on the site visit team, as well as being on the screening committee. I led the screening committee, so the note I jotted down to myself about the lack of regional budget experience was this: I'm not worried about budget. If he approaches our regional budget the way the Franklin town manager said he approached the MSBA project, we won't have a problem. The town manager said, I never saw a principal involved like this. He was invested in every detail. I was like, who is this guy? He's so hands-on. Did he design this? He was well-spoken, honest, smart, thoughtful. He wants to get it right and is more than willing to do what it takes. That, for me, is leadership. So I'd like you to consider, even though we have initiatives that we would like to push forward quickly, and we don't want to derail our timetable, this is a decision that really obviously cannot be taken lightly, and I'm not dismissing those things. What I am asking you to do is really think about the other components of leadership and what is important to you in terms of bringing someone here who has as many of those components as possible.
Katie? I hate to follow that. That was amazing, Diane. I'm really enthusiastic about Peter Light. I agree with Tessa and Maya that he came in and he was inspirational. I think the values that he outlined of equity and innovation line up beautifully with our district, and I have no doubt that he will do the homework he needs and put in the work to get up to speed and lead our district well. So I am ready to support appointing Peter Light.
No pressure, Eileen, but go right ahead.
I guess I have to speak now. So, I was in the two-side visit to visit Mr. Parker and Mr. Light. I was so impressed by the overwhelming of the student, teacher, staff, whoever in Weston. And so I almost think maybe I should move to Weston. When I went there to see their beautiful facility, there are many, many different ideas of decorate their school and making the memory of the graduates, high school graduates, something, decorate their wall. All those things are so very impressive. And the most very movable thing is you can see all those students, teacher, everybody are very eagerly to speak for Mr. Parker. And the student, he can even just stay in the hallway, just talk to whoever was free, like, can you come to speak for me? And that's just so movable, so touch for me can see any kind of leader could, have this kind of very, very special and very touching relationship with the students. I think I know from my experience, I never see any kind of principal or any leader could do that, or maybe doing that. And I did talk to Anthony often, when he was here side meet with us. And also, everybody already mentioned, I don't want to mention more of those, his creative vision, or he adopted the idea from whoever can, design the curriculum, the new curriculum, especially June Academy was like borrowed for other district. I think I probably would like to see that happen in our district too. And from that, point of view, I really love Anthony very much. And I don't know if he can hear that here. I'm speaking here, but, so I hope he could. And the rest of them, I think everybody already speak, a lot. For Peter Light, I think he's really, he really has very wide experience of, especially for, we have the site visit. We went to see the very beautiful model school of Franklin. He certainly is a leader, leads the whole project. And just as Diane mentioned, we heard the town manager said those things. So for the task, we're gonna facing in very short term. I think Peter will be the very good fit for this. From that point of view, but for the long term, the student relationship, teacher relationship, and our just AB curriculum wise design or implementation, I really love Anthony, and I have no problem with both very qualified candidates. either one going forward, I have no problem. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. I will say that I really enjoyed meeting with Anthony, and I spent the day with both of the candidates, going around to their different forums and touring the schools. I think that both are very charismatic individuals. They are very creative. I think both of them spoke passionately and from the heart about how much they love students and how important it is that our focus stay on the students. I do feel that Peter so I felt more, I feel stronger about Peter Light because when he speaks, it's truly heartfelt. And one of the things that I appreciated the most about him is that there isn't any kind of educational jargon when he's speaking. He speaks in honest, straightforward, he gives honest, straightforward answers and explanations and examples that don't fall into kind of what we wanted to hear, like what he thinks we want to hear, but really felt like it was heartfelt. I will say that it is really important that when we make whatever decision we make here tonight, that we do have an incredible central office staff, but we're hiring someone to lead the district, and we cannot expect or burden our incredible central office staff to pick up the pieces for the things that Peter or Anthony aren't able to do. I think that we've relied too long, for too many years, on the assistant superintendents to really kind of do a lot more than what they've been asked to do and to keep things moving forward. And it's not fair to do this again. So we have to, if we all decide that we are going to move forward with one of the other candidates, we also have to put into place some very strong support systems for either candidate so that they are successful and that we don't end up relying on other central office staff to do things that are outside of their own responsibilities, because that's a tremendous load anyway, just the expectations and the workloads that each individual has. So that said, I would like to go, I guess I'm going to kind of try to get a sense of where everybody is. First of all, does anyone else want to kind of make a statement, more of a comment on where you are? It would be really great if we could end the evening in a unanimous kind of decision. If we can't get there, we can't get there. But I think I would prefer to continue to have more conversation to reach a little bit more of a cohesive, more of a consensus. So is there anyone else that has spoken that, after hearing the other feedback, would like to say anything else? Mary.
So if I had to choose between the two, I would lean the way most are toward Peter Light. But I just really need to ask all of you, do you really think that that it's okay to bring in someone who needs that growth period with where our district is, given our size, given that we're a region, given the complexity of the region? Do you feel comfortable with that growth period? And I honestly don't see how that could happen without relying on central office staff to pick up more than their share.
Paul?
So, but what would the alternative be?
I mean, in my mind, see, I agree that we have set a process and we can trust the process, but part of this process is to say, if we didn't get the pool of candidates that we want, to say that we need to end this process and start all over again. And believe me, my energy level doesn't want to go that route, but my level of thinking about what the district needs and what the students in our district need says that I need to find some energy somewhere to consider another process. So we could go through, we could say that we were not satisfied with the candidates here, and we could go with another interim year and then look at a new process. I will say, I feel like, I know we had, you know, our profile and we had our advertisement, and there's elementary level, there's secondary level, there's administrative level that could be within those, and there's central office level. I doubt you'll ever get people who have all of those, but for me, some central office, and I know Peter has 2 years of it, but it still feels really light to me. No pun intended, sorry.
That's okay, because Paul says he really shines.
I know. I worry, you know, as the person who's chairing the school building committee, you know, I rely on the central office staff. I sit on budget subcommittee. I rely on central office staff. And I just worry that neither of these candidates can step into that role today. And, you know, in our advertisement, which I think is also a piece of what we were considering, we wanted an outstanding leader who should have a record of successful administrative experience, preferably with regional school districts, and be ready to step in as a stabilizing and galvanizing force during a critical period of growth for the district. I think these gentlemen are, you know, great people, and I really admire all of the work that they've done. I just don't think it's enough for us right now.
I don't know. Maybe my opinion can be discounted because I'm so new to this, but I really, really disagree. I mean, I understand that piece of it is absolutely important, but Peter does have MSBA experience, and it may not have been on multiple projects, but he obviously was intimately involved with the MSBA project that he worked with. So for me, I feel like that piece is checked off. You know, budget is not my strong suit, nor is it the thing that I care about the most, to be honest, but that's why we have people like Dennis, you know, and you, to work on these things. But I didn't doubt that he would learn. I think one of the things that really struck me about Peter is that he's clearly a lifelong learner. And in terms of looking for a leader of our district, I don't really, we expect adults to model behavior for children, you know, just generally. As parents, as teachers, those are all things that we hope for the adults in our kids' lives, is to model good behavior for them. And one of the things I thought when I was hearing Peter speak in all of the different venues in which I heard him was this, you know, passion for children and their development and where they're going to go as future members of our society, really. And his interview in the day spent here really showed me, even more than the initial interview that we had with him, how much he really values learning for himself as well. I couldn't believe the amount of research he did. I mean, he was talking about Pfeiffer's Day. So, you know, I mean, I think that that's kind of an obscure thing that he certainly didn't have to mention, and maybe he was just trying to win brownie points. But to me, it said, I really looked into your community. He drove around. He looked at different neighborhoods. He really spent a lot of time, and maybe that, I don't remember if he shared that publicly, if that was during our dinner with him, but, you know, he's willing to learn. And I understand that we need someone that has the knowledge to start, but I feel like he has a lot of really good, strong, base, foundational knowledge, and that he certainly is going to do a lot of homework leading up to any of the big initiatives and things that we have going on. And after listening to and reading about many other superintendents or assistant superintendents or principals in other parts of the state, the country, whatever, there aren't a lot of school districts that are exactly like ours. We have a lot of quirks that are different. Franklin actually comes pretty close in comparison to size, number of schools, the number of personalities that go with those schools. I have to imagine that's not something that he spoke to, but you have to imagine that with that many schools and that many building leaders, that you're going to have a lot of opinions. And, you know, there isn't another regional district that's as big as ours. There are lots of little regional districts, and personally I think looking at a district the size of Franklin is more valuable than a much smaller regional district. So I really feel like, for me, you asked, are you willing to take that risk? I am willing to take that risk, because listening to him speak, I was like, that is someone I want to learn from. That's someone I want to sit through hours and hours and hours of meetings with. He, you know, maybe he isn't as funny as Bill, I don't know, but he certainly had a sense of humor, and, you know, I think that that's important. He was relatable. He obviously values relationships, and I think those are all things that are really super important.
Could I chime in as well?
Yes. No, I gotta say, Maya, Deanne just raised her hand, but you go right ahead. No, you go right ahead, Maya. You go right ahead.
I really can't see.
You can't?
People talk about wanting a galvanizing and unifying leader in the district, and people talk about wanting a clean and transparent process. I really feel that if we don't choose one of these two candidates, we muck up the process, and we are not unified, and we are not going to be galvanized, and our future people coming into the district are going to think very, very hard about what we're doing, and we went about this in a most professional way. I thought we had an amazing committee together. I can't thank the committee enough for the search committee enough for its dedication and process and transparency and thoroughness and professionalism, and just about everyone around this table, and you know, every one of the 90 people listening to Mr. Light were impressed by him and thought that he delivers a personality and an experience that will fit us really well. And I'm concerned to backtrack now. I really feel that it doesn't serve our process well. It doesn't serve our district well to try to come up with other alternatives now to speed up a learning curve that, you know, either way, someone new has to learn about our district, and they have to step into their role and get some support and get their bearings. And that's not something that we can skip, no matter who we choose. And these are the two candidates in front of us, and we owe our district a follow-through here that is, you know, among these people, in my opinion. And I really thought Mr. Light was fantastic and would serve our district really, really well, and would be a very strong leader.
Thanks, Maya. Deanne?
So I want to bring up a few things because I thought Maya made a few good points, and I just end up forgetting things because everyone ends up making some really good points. But again, so I want to bring up our last process. In our last process, I just remember the arguments of we had regional candidates, if people remember, and the comment was they're too small. So we either, you know, it's when we have regional candidates, they're not as big as ours. When we don't have regional candidates, they're not regional candidates. We always seem to find the negatives, or, well, they're just not good enough here, they're just not good enough here. No one's going to be good enough for our district, because our district's awesome, and we all know it, and, you know, we have great teachers, we have great staff, we have great students, yada, yada, yada. Little Seinfeld. So, and great parents, yes, thank you. And a great school committee. No. So, I wanted to say, in regards to when we look at what their qualifications are, I do look at a principal as someone in the, I'm from production. People in production have to make decisions fast. And we always used to make fun of people in corporate because they sit and they sit and they sit. So when you have a combination of that production as well as corporate, it's a great balance because they can think on their feet, but they also know how to take the facts in. So we have someone, both of these candidates were principals, and I do remember we would say about some candidates, well, they don't have enough experience within the schools. We want more central office, or now we want more central office, less schools. We really have to figure out what we want. So I think the principals, it is our own little central office. I think Peter has been managing being a principal and all the nuances and budgets and difficulties involved in that. He's seen what a central office is. During his forum, he seemed to understand a lot about a regional district. I mean, he brought up stuff I was surprised about, in regards to the regional transportation. I mean, he seemed to have already studied it before even coming in here. We have a great new finance director, and and I think anybody who comes into the district, whether they're from a small regional district, a large non-regional district, whatever, is still going to have a learning curve. And it goes back to, we have to trust our process. In our process, these were the candidates that were brought out. I do think if our subcommittee didn't feel that we had good candidates, then they would have come back and said, we have no candidates, we need to redo the process. But our subcommittee, which was made up of a large group of people, felt these candidates were good. And now we're looking at these candidates, and I do think Peter Light has that experience with a building project. He also sounds like he has that experience to be able to sell the building project. He had such great ideas. We've always been sitting here discussing, how do we get the word out? I couldn't believe some of the ways they got the word out for some of their stuff. I was like, yeah, anyway, I was really impressed with some of the ways that they got the word out. So he has the MSBA experience. He has the finance experience. He has a lot of these items. It's just never going to be perfect, but I do think he has a lot of these items that we've checked off as our wants. There's not going to be one perfect person that comes into our district, and I think we do have to sit back and do a reality check of there's not going to be the perfect person, because if we do this again, then we're going to find a bunch of negatives in that process. And we have to start believing in ourselves and believing in our own process and stop judging, well, should we step back and start this process over again? I don't think these candidates need that. I do think it sends a bad message out to future candidates. And I also think it sends a bad message out to our subcommittee that the people that they sent to us just weren't good enough. So.
So I agree with quite a bit of what was said by the last three speakers, but one thing I don't agree with is, if I felt strongly that neither of these candidates was the right person, then I would be all for stopping. I don't think that speaks badly to the process. I think that's why we're sitting at this table. Ultimately, it's our decision. So I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing, and in fact, districts do that. I mean, Bill, am I wrong? I mean, districts often will have a search that doesn't end with a candidate, and they have to go on and continue beyond 1 year, don't they?
Do I have to answer?
No, you don't have to. But
periodically, that does happen.
Yeah, that does happen. So, I think it's our job to evaluate these candidates. I think, and I said it at the outset, I do respect the process that we went through, and I too agree that I don't think we would have candidates in front of us if the search committee hadn't done their job. So I really appreciate that. And as I said at the beginning too, I think Peter definitely hits more of the points on our profile than Anthony does, and that's not to say Anthony's not also a very strong and inspiring leader. I'm just not sure that he's at the stage in his career that he would bring enough to the table for us. But, you know, that being said, you know, some of the things that are really important to me personally in leadership is the ability to move things forward. The ability to get to a decision when you're working on a project or when you're overseeing a project. And based on the feedback that I got when I was reference checking, those are qualities that Peter Light has. And one of the other things that came up that I reported on when I read my report was that he recognizes what he needs to know and reaches out to people to get knowledge to help in the decision-making process. And we do have a very strong central office, and you know, frankly, we've said this over and over, we have enough work going on in this district, whether it's the building project or the social emotional learning or whatever the initiative is, that we've already split up things in the district leadership. And we have different people taking leadership roles on projects. And I think the role of the superintendent is in part to help those things get to completion, to help in the decision-making process, and not necessarily to have all of that knowledge in their own head. I mean, part of leadership is being able to inspire others to take leadership roles as well. So based on the feedback that I heard, both in the site visits and through the reference checking, I think Peter Light has many of those qualities. I do have concerns that he doesn't have the depth of experience, but, you know, frankly, as been said around the table already, we're not going to find somebody that hits every single data point on our profile. It's just, it's not practical to think that that's going to happen. So I think in our own minds we have to prioritize what we think is most important and essential and get to a place that you're comfortable with that. So I would support his candidacy. I think he has many of those qualities, and I think over time with experience he'll gain even more, and I do think he's a visionary, and that has come across both in his interaction with our in our forum a couple of weeks ago, and also based on what I heard from people that knew him and have worked with him. And that's very exciting. That's an exciting prospect for me being in the district, so I would support his candidacy.
Hold on, I just want to see if there's someone else. Eileen?
I think I heard everybody. I don't want to repeat that, and I like what Tessa said, Deanne said, and also Bridget said that. I think I did not mention before, it's really, really very hard to compare Anthony and Peter. These two individuals are very different. They are, one is very active to speaking to everyone. One is kind of listening a lot. You know, so for their leadership style, they're different too. You know, I don't want to repeat what everybody says. And if we would like to reach the consensus tonight, my answer is a little bit towards to Peter Light. Thank you.
Thank you. Tessa?
I just wanted to add a little bit about the feedback, because I wrote very concise, small paragraphs about what the feedback was from the staff and the community and parents. And I just wanted to note that one of the things that we were tasked with is finding candidates that would make everyone excited and happy, so to speak. And I have to say that the feedback for both candidates overwhelmingly was really positive. There was a lot of enthusiasm about some of the things that Anthony would bring. There was a lot of enthusiasm about some of the things that Peter would bring. And I, you know, although there was about 90, so 180 feedback forms. I mean, that's a lot of people that put in their thoughts. Students, you know, all the way up to central office, and there was a lot of people that were very excited. A vast majority of people were very excited about the things that these two candidates could possibly bring to our district.
Sorry, Paul.
So, I do, you know, I've been through the interim search, and
Paul, can you put your mic a little closer?
So I've been through I was chair of this interim search committee, and we through that process, we were very diligent about respecting the process and adhering to the profile, and I trust that also happened. So in this search, I was just surprised that the outcome was a little different than what I expected, having seen the results of previous searches. After Maya spoke the first time, I realized I don't have the votes to pursue an alternative route. So, having said that, my support, and I think I said this earlier, would be for Peter Light for a number of reasons that have already been said.
Dan?
So since we're lucky enough for this search to actually have a superintendent sitting with us, like normally we've never had a superintendent with us. So now I'm going to
I don't think that Bill would like to comment. I mean, I could be speaking for you, but
no, actually, it doesn't necessarily, I'm not asking him to comment on the candidates and give his vote for which candidate. It's more a question of, you've been through this process, right? You were a newbie at one point, moving into a superintendent role.
a couple years ago, right?
A few years, just a few, right? So I just want to ask you, in your opinion, because you've seen our district, can candidates like these move into our district and understand the nuances you've seen our district and be able to manage them? So it's not necessarily saying, you like one over the other. It's just, kind of more of an understanding from a superintendent perspective.
So I'm gonna give you an out and say that if you would prefer not to, it's completely up to you. But I'm not gonna stop you either.
Well, let me just answer that by telling you a quick story, if you don't mind. So over many, many years as a superintendent, working with principals, both new principals and very experienced principals, on the process of hiring teachers. And I've had this conversation probably every year for 21 years, more than once, with different principals who are looking for teachers, and interviewing many teachers, young teachers, brand new out of teacher preparation programs, and very experienced teachers. And what I have seen is that principals typically want to have experienced teachers in their classrooms. And so part of the story is that every district, as you all know, have school budgets that they have to live within. And the hiring process, whether we like it or not, because we always say we have to get the best, but we are limited in terms of resources. However, even more important than that, in the teaching ranks in a school, I believe that it's good to have balance in terms of experience. And so the conversation I always had with principals would go something like this. I'd like to hire this 15-year veteran. And I would say, well, our budget, we only have a budget, we can hire somebody at Master's 5. Yeah, but, everybody liked this person. So, well, what about the 3 inexperienced teachers you hired? Well, they like them too, but, and we have this conversation. And then at the end, I simply end the conversation by reminding them, and I used to say this often, remember, we all had to start somewhere. And so what I would tell you is, do I believe in a person who hasn't been a superintendent before can do this job? If they have the right qualities, the right support, I think someone can. Are there any guarantees? There are no guarantees that an experienced superintendent can be successful either. But in the end, each one of you have to take a step back and you have to consider all that's been said tonight. I think the process was very, very thorough. Clearly, the information that you've garnered about each of these two candidates has been extensive and exhaustive, and you know, I would leave it at that.
Dennis, would you like to say something?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So I agree with Bill. I think the process was pretty thorough. And, you know, if we sat here and got to the end and I really thought that if I was had a similar thought as Mary did, I'd be trumpeting that position also. That, you know, maybe we got through and we didn't like the candidates. But I can't say that. I mean, I can't say that I did not like the candidates, and I can't say that I didn't look at the candidates and project out that I saw someone that I thought could be the superintendent of the Acton Boxborough School District, because I think I did. Now, is there a guarantee? No, there's no guarantee. I mean, we went through this 5, 6 years ago, and the common theme was people didn't like who came out, or people didn't like who didn't come out, and so we can kind of go both ways, but ultimately, I sit here and have been contemplating this since the time I met both gentlemen. Do I think one of them could do it? And to me, the answer was yes. I thought, and if I did not think that, then I'd be right next to Mary saying the same thing, that we can't take it. But ultimately, if I think somebody can do it, then, and I'm ready to support them, and I will, because I think this district needs to move forward. And we've kind of been caught up and you know, sloshing around in the surf for a while, and we seem to have got our good solid foundation underneath us the last half of the year, and we've kind of moved things forward, including this process. So I cannot tell you that at the end of this process, I'm sitting here thinking that we got to throw this back and start over again, because I really believe that. Is there a guarantee? No. But I do see someone that I think can be the superintendent, so I'd like to make a motion.
Can I ask one more question before
Sure.
you do that? Thank you. I just wanted to, you know what? Go ahead and make a motion.
Yeah, it's not kind of the debate. I'm just going to make a motion.
Fine, then we can continue discussion.
Correct. I move to appoint Peter Light to the position of Superintendent of Schools for the Acton Boxborough School District, beginning July 1, 2018, pending successful contract negotiations.
Second.
Is there any more discussion? And I really would like, if there really are any more thoughts, please share them so that we can just lay everything on the table. This is too important to kind of just not really understand everybody's point of view. Eileen?
I think everybody already mentioned that. I do believe whoever gets this position, they will have a lot of learning curve. I hope we can have really strong central office support, and every one of us support. Thank you.
So I'm just going to really clarify. I think you absolutely have a tremendous central office staff and support. I'm just not willing to burden them and go in with the expectation that we are going to burden them to do more than what we have already asked them to do in their roles. So I think that whatever decision that is made, we need to make sure that we have supports in place for our, if we choose Peter Light, I think we need to make sure that we as a committee commit to the funds that are necessary, or whatever is necessary to support him, and not rely on other people doing 2.5 times their job.
I don't know what exactly do you mean for that. For the central office, part of their job is support whoever is the superintendent. And I'm aware in this 2.5 year, school committee member right here in this table, I never had clear framework say who's doing what job or who's doing this or who's doing that. I don't have any that clear picture to me for these 2.5 years. And if we're saying our central office people gets very overloaded, we need to look into that. But for whoever is our new leader, you know, our central office people and us definitely will have our tremendous energy to support them.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Mary, do you want to say something?
I just want to clarify that knowing the central office as I do, they will support whoever we choose to be in that position. I think what Amy's saying is an appropriate level of support. So in other superintendents, when we've hired, there's been an induction program, a program that kind of teaches them how to be a superintendent, and there have been coaching supports. And so there are added supports that the school committee can consider to support any individual coming into that position.
That is exactly what I was trying to say, Mary. Thank you very much. You've worded it very well. Okay, so if there are no more comments, I would like to take a vote, and we need to do it by roll call vote. And I'm going to start with Maya because she can't see what anybody else is doing. So, all those in favor of Dennis's motion to appoint?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So, without any further discussion, I think we have just decided our next superintendent. I'd like to take a moment to step outside the room and give him a call and make sure he hasn't changed his mind. And I'll be right back. I would like to suspend the meeting for just a couple of minutes. And when I come back, what I'll do is I'll step out, I'll come back and let you know whether he's still on board. And at that point, we need to go into an executive session to discuss any kinds of, well, we have to go in executive session, and I'll read all about that in a minute. Okay.
When I did all of it, it's just, I don't have the time.
Yes.
Okay, so just a couple more minutes and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
Peter. He has been following the process, watching the live stream, is very excited to be offered the position, and really looking forward to coming to work for the district. He thinks it's really an amazing district. He's heard all of the concerns, and he's comfortable with all of the concerns and ready to come in and address each one of them and put his whole heart into it. So pending successful contract negotiations, this is where we are. So thank you. Big deep breath. We do need to go into executive session, and let me read it properly. And Maya, I realize that you are going to step off now, so thank you so much for taking the time, and I know in a really hectic, crazy schedule that you're on, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Maya. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, good night. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. All right. To conduct, okay, so we need to move in. Yeah, this is still the open meeting. Yeah. So I would like to call an executive session to conduct strategy in preparation, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2. We will return to open meeting for the sole purpose of adjourning. And we need to poll for that. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We need a second.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.